thought it was just another ransom case. He was wrong. What the detective found in the shadows of the greenhouse changed the course of the investigation and his life forever. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The rain fell in steady sheets over Boston's cobblestone streets that October evening in 1903, casting a silver sheen over the gas lamps that lined Commonwealth Avenue. Detective William Crawford stood beneath the awning of his office building, watching the downpour with a troubled expression etched across his angular features. At 32 years of age, he had built a reputation as one of the city's most perceptive investigators, a man whose tall, broad-shouldered frame and penetrating gray eyes had become familiar sights in the corridors of justice. Yet tonight, the letter in his coat pocket weighed heavier than any case file he had ever carried. The ransom note had arrived that afternoon, delivered by a street urchin who had vanished into the crowd before William could question him. The paper was fine quality, the handwriting elegant and unmistakably feminine. It demanded $5,000 for the safe return of young Timothy Ashford, the 7-year-old son of railroad magnate Charles Ashford. But it was the final line that had seized William's attention and refused to release it. Come alone to the Gardner Estate greenhouse at midnight. Tell no one, or the boy pays the price. William pulled his black overcoat tighter against the chill and stepped into the rain, his leather boots splashing through puddles as he made his way toward the carriage stand. The Gardner estate had been abandoned for 3 years, ever since the mysterious death of its owner, the eccentric horticulturist Vincent Gardner. The sprawling property on the outskirts of the city had fallen into elegant decay, its once magnificent gardens now wild and overgrown, its greenhouse a crystal palace of shattered glass and withered plants. As his hired carriage rattled through the darkening streets, William reviewed what he knew of the Ashford case. Timothy had disappeared 4 days earlier while walking home from his music lesson. His tutor, a young woman named Miss Catherine Pembroke, had been the last person to see him. She had reported leaving the boy at the corner of Beacon Street, watching until he reached his family's brownstone door, but Timothy had never arrived. The household staff had found no trace of him, and Charles Ashford had descended into a state of frantic desperation that bordered on madness. The detective had interviewed Miss Pembroke twice. She was a woman of remarkable composure and intelligence, her green eyes reflecting both sorrow and determination. At 26, she possessed a rare combination of classical beauty and intellectual bearing. Her chestnut hair, always properly pinned beneath a modest hat, framed a face of delicate features and porcelain skin. William had found himself unusually affected by her presence, noting the grace with which she moved, the musical quality of her voice, and the obvious depth of her concern for young Timothy. She had taught the boy piano for nearly 2 years and spoke of him with genuine affection. The carriage began to slow as they approached the overgrown drive leading to the Gardner estate. William instructed the driver to wait at the main road, pressing several bills into the man's weathered hand. He would approach on foot, as the ransom note demanded. The detective checked his pocket watch by the light of the carriage lamp. 11:45. He had 15 minutes. The path to the greenhouse wound through what had once been meticulously maintained gardens. Now wild roses tangled with forgotten statuary, and ivy claimed the stone benches where ladies had once taken their tea. The rain had softened to a persistent drizzle, and fog was beginning to rise from the damp earth, curling around the tree trunks like ghostly fingers. William's hand rested on the revolver beneath his coat, though he hoped desperately that he would not need to use it. The greenhouse emerged from the mist like a phantasm, its iron framework still elegant despite the missing panes and climbing vines. Candlelight flickered from within, casting dancing shadows across the remaining glass. William's heartbeat quickened as he approached the entrance, his every sense alert for danger. He pushed open the door, which groaned on rusted hinges, and stepped inside. The interior was a strange mixture of decay and careful arrangement. Someone had cleared a space among the dead plants and broken pottery. A small table stood in the center, draped with white cloth and set with a silver candlestick holding 3 lit tapers. But it was the figure standing beside the table that made William freeze in his tracks. Catherine Pembroke turned to face him, her expression a complex mixture of relief, fear, and something else he could not immediately identify. She wore a dark green traveling dress, her hair partially loosened from its pins, as though she had been running. In her trembling hands, she held a leather-bound journal. "Miss Pembroke," William said, his voice steady despite his surprise. "What are you doing here? Where is the boy?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but she held his gaze with remarkable courage. "Detective Crawford, I know how this must appear, but you must listen to me. Timothy is safe. He is hidden where his father cannot find him, and he must remain so until you understand the truth." William took a step closer, his hand still near his weapon. "You sent the ransom note? You took the child?" "I did not take him," Catherine said quickly, her voice breaking slightly. "I saved him. Detective, Charles Ashford is not the man he appears to be. This journal belonged to Timothy's mother, Elizabeth. She died 2 years ago, and everyone believed it was influenza. But she wrote the truth here, in these pages. She was being poisoned, slowly, deliberately, by her own husband." The detective felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. "That is a grave accusation, Miss Pembroke. Why would Ashford murder his own wife?" Catherine stepped forward, extending the journal toward him with both hands. "For her fortune. Elizabeth came from old Boston money. When she died, everything passed to Charles, with Timothy as the sole heir. But there is a clause in her will. If anything should happen to Timothy before he reaches majority, the entire estate returns to Elizabeth's brother, who lives in England. Charles has been making the boy ill, Detective, the same way he made Elizabeth ill. I have been watching, documenting. I found this journal hidden in the music room 3 weeks ago. I knew I had to act." William took the journal, his mind racing through the implications. He opened it to a marked page and read Elizabeth Ashford's elegant script by candlelight. The words detailed months of mysterious illness, of doctors who could find no cause, of her growing suspicion that her evening tea tasted strange. The entries grew more desperate, more certain, until they stopped abruptly with a final, unfinished sentence. "I fear I have waited too long to speak. If anything happens to me, protect my Timothy from—" "Where is the boy now?" William asked, looking up from the page. "He is safe with my sister in Salem," Catherine replied. "She knows nothing of the true circumstances. I told her only that I was protecting him from a threat, but I could not go to the police, Detective. Charles Ashford contributes generously to the department. He has friends in high places. I feared no one would believe the word of a music teacher against such a prominent man. But you, I have heard you are different. They say you care only for the truth, regardless of wealth or position." William closed the journal and studied the woman before him. In the candlelight, her face showed the strain of the past days, the shadows beneath her eyes speaking of sleepless nights and desperate decisions. Yet there was a strength in her bearing, a conviction that touched something deep within him. He had encountered false accusations before, vindictive servants and jealous rivals. But Catherine Pembroke did not strike him as either vindictive or jealous. She struck him as terrified and brave in equal measure. "Why the ransom note?" he asked. "Why the secrecy?" "I needed to speak with you alone," Catherine explained, her voice growing steadier now that he was listening. "I needed you to hear the truth without Charles present, without his lawyers and his influence. I knew you would come if you thought it was about saving Timothy, and I knew you would come alone because you are a man of honor. I have watched you, Detective Crawford. I attended the trial of the Morrison case last spring. I saw how you stood up for that immigrant family when others would have looked away. I knew you were someone who might believe the unbelievable." William felt an unexpected warmth at her words, a recognition that she had seen in him what he hoped was there. "You have put yourself in considerable danger, Miss Pembroke. If what you say is true, Ashford will stop at nothing to find his son, and you will be the first person he suspects." "I know," Catherine whispered, "but I could not stand by and watch that child suffer the same fate as his mother. I have grown to love Timothy as if he were my own. He is gentle and kind, with a gift for music that brings joy to everyone who hears him play. He does not deserve to die for his inheritance." The detective made his decision. "I will need to examine Timothy myself to document any evidence of poisoning. I will need to investigate Ashford's household, his finances, his associations. This will not be a simple matter, Miss Pembroke. Men like Charles Ashford do not fall easily." "Then you believe me?" Hope lit Catherine's face like the sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "I believe that you believe it," William said carefully. "And I believe that Elizabeth Ashford's journal deserves investigation. But I must warn you, if this proves to be mistaken, or if any harm has come to that boy, there will be consequences." "I understand," Catherine said. and I am prepared to face them. But please, detective, you must move quickly. Charles has been to my rooms. He has questioned my landlady. It is only a matter of time before he thinks to look in Salem." William nodded, his mind already forming a plan. "I will need you to trust me, Miss Pembroke. Can you do that?" Catherine met his eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them that was more than professional cooperation. It was a recognition, a meeting of kindred spirits who valued truth above comfort, justice above convenience. "Yes," she said softly, "I can trust you. Then here is what we will do," William began, moving closer to the table so they could speak in lower tones. "Tomorrow, you will return to the city and go about your normal routine as much as possible. I will begin a quiet investigation into Ashford's affairs. I have a contact at the hospital who can analyze substances without asking questions. If we can find proof that Timothy is being poisoned, we will have grounds to act. But you must not give Ashford any reason to suspect that you know more than you have told." "What if he asks me directly about Timothy?" Catherine asked, anxiety creeping back into her voice. "Tell him only what you have already said, that you saw the boy to his door and know nothing of what happened after. Express concern, offer to help search, but volunteer nothing more. Can you do that?" Catherine nodded, though William could see the fear in her eyes. He felt a powerful urge to protect her, to shield her from the danger she had walked into with such brave foolishness. Instead, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder, feeling her tremble slightly beneath his touch. "You are not alone in this anymore," he said quietly. "I give you my word that I will see this through to the truth, whatever it may be, and I will not let harm come to you or Timothy if it is in my power to prevent it." Catherine looked up at him, and tears finally spilled down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for not dismissing me as a hysterical woman or a criminal. You cannot know what it means to have someone believe." William felt something shift in his chest, a door opening that he had kept carefully locked for many years. He had devoted himself to his work, to justice, allowing no room for personal attachments that might cloud his judgment. Yet standing here in this abandoned greenhouse with Catherine Pembroke, he felt the foundations of that careful isolation begin to crack. "We should leave separately," he said, reluctantly dropping his hand from her shoulder. "I came by hired carriage. Is there someone waiting for you?" "I have a horse tied beyond the south garden wall," Catherine replied, wiping her eyes with a delicate handkerchief. "I know these grounds from childhood. My father was Vincent Gardner's solicitor. I used to play here while they conducted business." "Then that is how you knew to choose this place," William observed. "Yes, and because I knew it would be abandoned, safe from prying eyes." Catherine gathered her composure, tucking the handkerchief away. "Detective Crawford, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you become a detective? What drives you to seek justice when it would be easier to look away?" William considered the question, surprised by its depth. "My father was a judge," he said finally. "A good man who believed that the law existed to protect the weak from the strong. He died when I was 16, killed by a man he had sentenced to prison, a man who was released and sought revenge. I watched my mother grieve, watched justice fail to protect the very man who had devoted his life to it. I decided then that I would not simply interpret the law from a bench. I would be out in the streets, finding the truth before it could be buried by money or influence." Catherine's eyes softened with understanding. "We are both fighting ghosts, then. You for your father, and I for Elizabeth and Timothy." "Perhaps," William agreed. "But tonight, Miss Pembroke, we fight for the living. We fight to give that boy a chance at the life his mother wanted for him. Then we shall succeed," Catherine said with renewed determination. "We must." They extinguished the candles and left the greenhouse as the clock tower in the distance began to toll midnight. The rain had stopped, and the moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting silver light across the abandoned gardens. William watched as Catherine disappeared into the shadows toward the south wall, her dark green dress blending with the night. He stood for a long moment, listening to the distant sound of hoofbeats fading into silence, before turning back toward the road where his carriage waited. As he rode back through the sleeping city, William held Elizabeth Ashford's journal carefully in his lap, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him like a mantle. He had encountered many cases in his career, but none that had seized his heart quite like this one, and he knew, with a certainty that was both thrilling and terrifying, that it was not just the case that had captured him. It was Catherine Pembroke herself, with her courage and her conviction, her intelligence and her grace. She had walked into his life like a character from a novel, and he suspected that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The morning sun cast pale golden light through the windows of William's office on Tremont Street, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air like tiny spirits. He had been awake all night, poring over Elizabeth Ashford's journal, taking meticulous notes, cross-referencing dates with public records he kept in his files. The evidence was circumstantial but damning. Elizabeth had documented every symptom, every strange occurrence, every moment when her husband had insisted she take her medicine or drink her specially prepared tea. William rubbed his eyes and reached for the cold coffee on his desk. His investigation had already begun in earnest. At dawn, he had sent a telegram to his contact at Massachusetts General Hospital, Dr. Henry Morrison, requesting a discreet meeting. Morrison was a toxicologist who had assisted William on several cases, a man whose discretion was matched only by his expertise. If anyone could identify what poison might have been used, it would be Henry. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. William called out permission to enter, and his assistant, young Robert Chen, stepped inside. The 20-year-old son of Chinese immigrants had proven himself invaluable to William's work, possessing a sharp mind and an ability to move through the city's various neighborhoods without attracting undue attention. "Detective Crawford, this just arrived for you," Robert said, handing him a sealed envelope. "A lady's maid delivered it not 10 minutes ago." William recognized the handwriting immediately. Catherine's script was as elegant as her bearing. He broke the seal and read quickly, "Detective Crawford, Charles Ashford came to my rooms this morning. He was in a state of extreme agitation and demanded to know if I had any knowledge of Timothy's whereabouts. I maintained my story as you instructed, but he seemed unconvinced. He has hired private investigators to search for the boy. He mentioned that he would spare no expense and would not rest until Timothy is found. I fear time is running short. Please, if you have learned anything that might help us, I beg you to act swiftly. I remain at your service. C.P." William set the letter down and looked at Robert. "I need you to do something for me, and it must be done with absolute discretion." "Of course, sir," Robert replied, his expression serious. "Go to the Ashford residence on Beacon Hill. Find a way to speak with the household staff, particularly anyone who prepares food or serves meals. I need to know what Timothy ate and drank in the weeks before his disappearance. I need to know who had access to his food, who prepared it, and whether anything unusual was observed. Can you do this without raising suspicion?" Robert nodded. "My sister works as a laundress 2 houses down from the Ashfords. She knows some of their staff. I can approach them through her, make it seem like casual conversation." "Good man," William said. "But Robert, be careful. Charles Ashford is dangerous, and he is watching everyone closely now. If you sense any danger, abandon the mission immediately." After Robert departed, William gathered Elizabeth's journal and several documents he had prepared. He had an appointment with Dr. Morrison at 11 o'clock, and he needed to present the case in a way that would convince the doctor to help without revealing too much about the ongoing investigation. The walk to Massachusetts General took him through the public garden, where nurses pushed perambulators and gentlemen read their morning newspapers on benches beneath the autumn trees. William found himself thinking of Catherine, wondering if she was safe, if Ashford's investigators were following her. The thought sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the October breeze. Dr. Morrison's laboratory was located in the hospital's basement, a realm of glass beakers, brass instruments, and the sharp smell of chemicals. The doctor himself was a slight man of 50, with wire-rimmed spectacles and ink-stained fingers that spoke of countless hours spent in research and documentation. "William, my friend," Morrison greeted him warmly. "Your telegram was intriguingly vague. What brings you to my humble domain?" William closed the door behind him and spoke in low tones. "Henry, I need your expertise on a matter of the utmost delicacy. I have reason to believe that a prominent citizen of this city may have poisoned his wife and is now attempting to do the same to his young son." Morrison's expression grew grave. "That is indeed serious. What evidence do you have?" William produced Elizabeth's journal and opened it to the pages where she had most clearly documented her symptoms. Morrison read carefully, his trained eye noting every detail. After several minutes, he looked up. "The symptoms she describes are consistent with arsenic poisoning," Morrison said thoughtfully. "The gastric distress, the numbness in her extremities, the weakness and confusion. Arsenic was quite commonly used in such cases during the last century. It is tasteless, odorless when properly administered, and its effects can be mistaken for various natural ailments. Can it be detected after death? William asked. In the hair and nails, yes, even years later, Morrison confirmed. The body deposits arsenic in these tissues, creating a permanent record. But to test for it, we would need samples from the deceased. William had anticipated this. Elizabeth Ashford is buried in Mount Auburn Cemetery. Would it be possible to obtain such samples without a full exhumation? Morrison considered this carefully. It would require a court order at minimum, and such an action would certainly alert her husband to our investigation. Then we must find another way, William said, frustration creeping into his voice. The boy, Timothy, if he is indeed being poisoned in the same manner, would there be evidence in his body now? Certainly, Morrison replied. A simple hair sample would tell us much. But again, you would need access to the child, and from what you have told me, his whereabouts are currently unknown to all but a few. William made a decision. Henry, if I could bring you such a sample within the next day or two, could you analyze it without official documentation? I would, of course, compensate you for your time and discretion. Morrison studied his friend's face for a long moment. William, I have known you for 10 years. I have never seen you pursue a case with such personal investment. There is more to this than you are telling me. There is a woman, William admitted, surprising himself with the confession. A brave woman who is risking everything to protect this child. I gave her my word that I would uncover the truth. A slight smile crossed Morrison's face. Then I shall help you keep that word. Bring me the sample, and I shall analyze it with all the skill at my disposal. But William, be careful. Men who poison their own families are not men who will hesitate to eliminate anyone who stands in their way. William returned to his office to find Robert already waiting, his young face flushed with excitement. Detective, I have learned something important, he said as soon as William entered. Tell me, William commanded, settling into his chair. I spoke with Mary, one of the Ashford housemaids. She is a friend of my sister and trusted me when I said I was concerned about the missing boy. She told me that for the past 3 months, Mr. Ashford had been very particular about Timothy's evening cocoa. He insisted on preparing it himself, saying that the boy was delicate and needed special ingredients to strengthen him. The cook thought it odd, as did the other servants, but no one dared question the master of the house. William felt a surge of vindication mixed with horror. Did she say anything else? Yes, sir. She said that Timothy had been growing increasingly ill. He would complain of stomach pains, headaches, and terrible fatigue. The family doctor had been called several times, but could find nothing specifically wrong. He attributed it to the boy's sensitive constitution and the stress of losing his mother. The same pattern as Elizabeth, William murmured, more to himself than to Robert. The same method, the same deliberate cruelty. There is more, Robert continued. Mary mentioned that since Timothy disappeared, Mr. Ashford has been searching the boy's room repeatedly. She said he seemed to be looking for something specific, something he was desperate to find. She wondered if perhaps Timothy had taken something valuable when he left. William's mind raced. What could the boy have taken? Or perhaps, what had Catherine taken when she removed Timothy from the household? Did Mary say what Ashford might be searching for? No, sir. But she did mention that Mrs. Ashford's personal effects had been packed away in the attic shortly after her death. Perhaps there is something there that Mr. Ashford fears might be discovered. Excellent work, Robert, William said, reaching into his desk drawer for several bills. This information is invaluable, but from this moment forward, you must stay away from the Ashford household. I do not want you endangered by association with this case. After Robert left, William sat in contemplation. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but he still needed irrefutable proof. He needed that hair sample from Timothy, and he needed to find a way to search Elizabeth's stored belongings without alerting Charles Ashford. The first problem had a clear solution. He would need to travel to Salem and examine the boy himself. The second problem was more complex. As if in answer to his thoughts, another knock sounded at his door. This time, it was Catherine herself who entered, her face pale but determined. She wore a burgundy walking dress with black trim, and despite the worry evident in her features, William thought she had never looked more beautiful. Miss Pembroke, he said, rising quickly. Should you be here? If Ashford has investigators watching you. I was careful, Catherine assured him, though her hands trembled slightly as she removed her gloves. I took a circuitous route. changing carriages twice. "Detective, I had to see you. I received a letter this morning that changes everything." She withdrew an envelope from her handbag and passed it to him. The paper was expensive, the handwriting unfamiliar. William read, "Dear Miss Pembroke, you do not know me, but I knew Elizabeth Ashford well. We were cousins, though the family connection was distant. I have heard of Timothy's disappearance, and I have reason to believe you may know more than you have revealed to the authorities. I am in possession of certain documents that Elizabeth entrusted to me before her death, documents that concern her husband's character and intentions. If you care for Timothy's welfare, you will meet with me. I am staying at the Parker House Hotel, room 27. Please come tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Come alone and tell no one. The boy's life may depend upon your discretion. Signed, Margaret Winters." William looked up from the letter, his detective's instincts immediately alert. "This could be a trap," he said carefully. "Ashford could have sent this to draw you out." "I considered that," Catherine replied. "But Elizabeth did mention a cousin Margaret in her journal. She wrote of sending her certain papers for safekeeping. What if this is genuine? What if this woman has evidence that could help us? Then I shall go with you," William said firmly. "The letter says to come alone," Catherine protested. "And the ransom note said the same, yet here we are, working together," William countered. "Miss Pembroke, Catherine, I will not allow you to walk into potential danger without protection. I can remain out of sight, but I will be there." Catherine's eyes widened slightly at his use of her Christian name, but she did not correct him. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice soft but urgent. "Detective Crawford, William, I must tell you something. When I took Timothy from his home, I also took something else." Elizabeth had hidden a small box beneath a loose floorboard in the music room. She mentioned it once in the journal, saying it contained proof of her suspicions. "I found it the day I took Timothy. I have been afraid to open it, afraid of what it might contain." William felt his pulse quicken. "Do you have it with you?" Catherine shook her head. "It is hidden in my rooms. I thought it too dangerous to carry with me, but if you think it might help our case, I could retrieve it tonight." "No," William said quickly. "If Ashford's men are watching your rooms, they might see you taking something. It is better to leave it where it is for now. But after we meet with this Margaret Winters tomorrow, if she proves trustworthy, we may need that box and whatever it contains." They stood close together in the small office, the afternoon light casting patterns across the floor. William found himself acutely aware of Catherine's presence, the faint scent of lavender that clung to her, the intelligence and courage that shone in her green eyes. "I must travel to Salem tonight," he said quietly. "I need to examine Timothy to obtain evidence that Dr. Morrison can analyze. Will you give me the address where he is staying?" Catherine hesitated only a moment before nodding. "He is with my sister, Helen Blackwood. She lives at 17 Maple Street. But please, William, be gentle with him. He is frightened and confused. He does not understand why he cannot go home, why I had to take him away from everything familiar." "I will treat him with the utmost care," William promised. "You have my word." Catherine reached out and placed her hand on his arm, a gesture that sent warmth spreading through his chest. "I know you will. I trust you, William. More than I have trusted anyone in a very long time." They made arrangements to meet the following afternoon before Catherine's appointment with Margaret Winters. As she prepared to leave, William caught her hand gently. "Catherine, please be careful. Stay in public places. Do not go anywhere alone after dark. Ashford is desperate, and desperate men are unpredictable." "I will," she promised. "And you, please be safe in Salem. Return to me soon." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond the professional. William knew in that moment that his feelings for Catherine Pembroke had transcended the bounds of mere cooperation. She had become precious to him in a way he had not anticipated, had not prepared for, and he knew with equal certainty that she felt the same. After she left, William prepared for his journey to Salem. He packed a small bag, included his medical kit for taking the hair sample, and secured Elizabeth's journal in his coat pocket. The train departed at 6 o'clock, and he intended to be on it. As the afternoon shadows lengthened across his office, William stood at the window, watching the street below. He thought of Catherine navigating the dangerous waters of this investigation, thought of young Timothy hiding in Salem, thought of Elizabeth Ashford lying in her grave with poison in her bones. Justice, he had always believed, was about uncovering truth and protecting the innocent, but now it had become something more personal, something that touched his heart as deeply as his conscience. The train to Salem cut through the gathering dusk, its whistle echoing across the Massachusetts countryside. William watched the landscape blur past his window, his mind already planning the next steps of the investigation. By the time he returned to Boston tomorrow, he would have the evidence Morrison needed, and with Margaret Winter's potential testimony and whatever secrets Elizabeth's hidden box contained, they would finally have the means to bring Charles Ashford to justice. But more than justice, William realized. He was fighting for the chance to build something with Catherine, something that could only exist if they survived this dangerous game they had entered. She had awakened in him feelings he had thought long buried beneath duty and dedication, and as the train carried him through the night toward Salem, William made a silent vow that he would protect her, would see this through to its conclusion, and would not rest until both Catherine and Timothy were safe. The coastal town of Salem greeted William with the scent of salt air and the distant cry of gulls wheeling above the harbor. He arrived at the train station just after 8 o'clock in the evening. The October darkness already settled over the narrow streets with their colonial architecture and gas-lit corners. Maple Street proved easy to find, a quiet residential area where modest but well-kept houses stood in neat rows, their windows glowing with warm lamplight against the autumn chill. Number 17 was a two-story dwelling painted a soft yellow, with white shutters and a small garden that even in the fading season showed evidence of careful tending. William approached the door and knocked gently, mindful of the late hour. A woman answered almost immediately, as though she had been waiting. She was younger than Catherine, perhaps 23 or 24, with similar features, but softer, rounder. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her blue eyes studied him with a mixture of wariness and hope. "Mrs. Blackwood?" William inquired, removing his hat. "My name is Detective William Crawford. Your sister Catherine sent me." Helen Blackwood's expression shifted to relief. "Thank heavens. Please, come in quickly. Catherine sent word that you might come, though I confess I did not expect you so soon." She stepped aside to allow him entry, glancing nervously up and down the street before closing the door. "Timothy is upstairs. He has been asking for Catherine constantly. The poor child is terribly confused and frightened." William followed Helen into a modest but comfortable parlor. A fire burned in the hearth, and the room was filled with the homey touches of a woman who took pride in her household. Helen gestured for him to sit, but remained standing herself, wringing her hands anxiously. "Mrs. Blackwood, I want to assure you that I am here to help Timothy, not to harm him," William began gently. "Your sister has shared with me her concerns about the boy's welfare, and I am investigating the matter thoroughly. But I need to examine Timothy, to gather evidence that will support our case. Would you permit me to see him?" Helen nodded slowly. "Catherine told me very little, only that the boy was in danger from his own father. I did not believe it at first. Mr. Ashford seemed such a respectable gentleman when I met him at Elizabeth's funeral, but Catherine insisted, and I have never known my sister to lie or to act without good reason." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Detective, is Timothy truly in danger? Is Catherine in danger for protecting him?" "Yes," William answered honestly. "They both are, which is why I must work quickly to gather the proof we need to ensure their safety legally and permanently." Helen led him upstairs to a small bedroom where Timothy Ashford lay in bed, a book of fairy tales open on his lap. The boy looked up as they entered, and William's heart clenched at the sight of him. Timothy was small for his 7 years, with large dark eyes and brown hair that fell across his forehead. His face was pale, almost translucent, and there were shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of illness and fear. Yet there was also something gentle and sweet in his expression, a sensitivity that reminded William of what Catherine had said about the boy's musical talent and kind nature. "Timothy," Helen said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "This is Mr. Crawford. He is a friend of Miss Pembroke's, and he has come to help you." The boy regarded William with solemn curiosity. "Are you going to take me home?" he asked, his voice thin and uncertain. William pulled a chair close to the bed and sat so that he was at eye level with the child. "Not just yet, Timothy, but I am working very hard to make sure you can go home safely soon. Tell me, how are you feeling? Are you still having stomach aches?" Timothy nodded. "They are better now, but before, they hurt terribly. and I felt so tired all the time, like I could not keep my eyes open even when I wanted to play. He hesitated, then added in a smaller voice, "Miss Pembroke says I have been sick. She says that is why I must stay here with Mrs. Blackwood for a little while." "Miss Pembroke cares about you very much," William said gently. "She wants you to be well and strong. Timothy, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be very honest with me. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," the boy replied. "Before you came here, before Miss Pembroke brought you to Salem, do you remember what you ate and drank at home, particularly in the evenings?" Timothy's face scrunched in concentration. "Father always made my cocoa himself. He said it was special, that it would help me grow strong like him. But it tasted strange sometimes, bitter. I did not like it, but Father said I must drink it all." William felt cold anger settle in his chest, but he kept his voice calm and kind. "Did anyone else give you food or drink? Your cook, perhaps, or the servants?" "Cook made my meals during the day," Timothy said, "but Father always insisted on preparing my cocoa at night. He would bring it to me himself and watch while I drank it. Mother used to give me cocoa before she got sick, and hers tasted sweet and good. But after Mother died, Father said he would take care of it, and it was never the same." William exchanged a meaningful glance with Helen, whose face had gone pale with understanding. "Timothy, I need to do something that might seem a bit odd, but it will help me make sure you stay healthy. May I take a small bit of your hair? Just a tiny snip, hardly noticeable. It will not hurt at all." The boy looked uncertain but nodded. "If it will help." William removed a small pair of scissors from his medical kit and carefully cut a few strands of hair from the back of Timothy's head, where it would not be noticed. He placed the sample in a clean glass vial and sealed it carefully. As he did so, he noticed something else. A faint rash on the boy's arms, another symptom consistent with arsenic poisoning. "You are being very brave, Timothy," William said warmly. "Miss Pembroke will be proud of you. Now I want you to rest and continue getting better. Mrs. Blackwood is taking excellent care of you, I can see." Timothy's face brightened slightly. "Will you tell Miss Pembroke that I miss her, and that I have been practicing my scales in my head just as she taught me?" "I will tell her," William promised, deeply moved by the boy's devotion to Catherine. "And I believe you will see her again very soon." After tucking Timothy back into bed and bidding him good night, William returned to the parlor with Helen. She offered him tea, which he accepted gratefully, and they sat in the firelight while she poured from a delicate china pot. "Detective Crawford," Helen began hesitantly, "may I speak frankly with you?" "Please do," William encouraged. "My sister has never acted impulsively in her life. She is the most measured, thoughtful person I know. When she arrived here with Timothy in the middle of the night speaking of danger and poison and terrible secrets, I was shocked beyond words. But I know Catherine, and I know she would never risk her reputation, her livelihood, or her freedom unless she was absolutely certain she was doing the right thing." Helen paused, meeting his eyes directly. "She spoke of you with great confidence, Detective. She said you were a man of honor and integrity. I see now that she was correct. But I also sensed something else in her voice when she mentioned you, something I have never heard before. She has developed feelings for you, has she not?" William felt heat rise to his face, but he did not look away. "Mrs. Blackwood, I am not certain it is appropriate for me to discuss—" "Please," Helen interrupted gently. "I am not asking to pry or to gossip. I am asking because Catherine is my sister, and I love her dearly. She has devoted her life to teaching, to helping others, and she has never allowed herself the luxury of personal happiness. If she has found someone who values her courage and intelligence, someone who sees her as I see her, then I am glad. But I must know, do you care for her, Detective? Not just as an investigator who needs her cooperation, but as a man who appreciates the remarkable woman she is." William set down his teacup and met Helen's gaze steadily. "Mrs. Blackwood, I have known your sister for only a few days, yet in that short time she has impressed me more deeply than anyone I have ever met. She is brave and brilliant and good in ways I did not know a person could be. Yes, I care for her, more than I have cared for anyone in many years. And when this terrible business is concluded, when Timothy is safe and justice has been served, I intend to tell her so properly." Helen smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then I pray you both succeed in your mission, Detective, and I pray you both find the happiness you deserve." William departed Salem on the first train the following morning, the precious vial containing Timothy's hair sample secured carefully in his coat pocket. He arrived in Boston just before noon, and went directly to Dr. Morrison's laboratory. The toxicologist greeted him with professional eagerness. "You have the sample?" Morrison asked without preamble. William produced the vial. "Hair from the boy, taken last night. He exhibits all the classic symptoms you described: gastric distress, weakness, skin rashes, and extreme fatigue. And I have testimony that his father personally prepared his evening cocoa for the past 3 months, insisting on doing so himself despite having household staff." Morrison took the vial and moved to his workbench, where an array of chemical apparatus was already prepared. "I can have preliminary results within a few hours. If arsenic is present in the concentrations I suspect, it will be unmistakable. Go, get some rest. You look as though you have not slept in days. Return at 4 o'clock, and I shall have your answer." William went to his office but found himself unable to rest. Instead, he reviewed his notes, organized his evidence, and prepared the case he would eventually present. At precisely 2 o'clock, he left to meet Catherine at the corner near the Parker House Hotel, as they had arranged. She was waiting for him, dressed in a deep blue walking dress with a matching hat, her face composed but her eyes revealing her anxiety. When she saw him, relief flooded her features. "You are back safely," she breathed. "And Timothy?" "Is well and misses you terribly," William assured her. "I obtained the sample we needed. Dr. Morrison is analyzing it now. But tell me, are you certain you wish to proceed with this meeting? We still do not know if this Margaret Winters is genuine." "I must," Catherine said firmly. "If she truly has evidence from Elizabeth, we cannot afford to ignore it." She paused, then added more softly, "But I am grateful you are here with me." They entered the hotel together, William following at a discreet distance as Catherine approached the desk and asked for room 27. The clerk directed them to the second floor, and they climbed the carpeted stairs in tense silence. Catherine knocked on the indicated door, and after a moment, it opened. The woman who stood before them was in her mid-30s, elegantly dressed in mourning black despite the passage of time since Elizabeth's death. She had intelligent gray eyes and auburn hair streaked with premature silver. Her expression was one of cautious hope mixed with deep sorrow. "Miss Pembroke?" she inquired. "I am Margaret Winters. Please come in. And you, sir? I assume you are the detective Catherine has enlisted to help her." "Detective William Crawford, at your service," William said, removing his hat as they entered the modest hotel room. Margaret closed the door and gestured for them to sit. "I apologize for the cloak and dagger nature of my request, but I had to be certain you would come alone, without Charles Ashford's knowledge. You see, my cousin Elizabeth wrote to me extensively before her death. She was afraid, terribly afraid, and she suspected what her husband was doing to her." "You knew she was being poisoned?" Catherine asked, leaning forward urgently. "I suspected," Margaret replied, her voice thick with regret. "But I had no proof, and Elizabeth was afraid to accuse Charles openly. He is, a powerful man with influential friends. She feared that if she spoke out without irrefutable evidence, he would find a way to silence her and then proceed to harm Timothy without interference." Margaret moved to a small trunk in the corner of the room and withdrew a bundle of letters tied with black ribbon. "These are all of Elizabeth's letters to me over the final year of her life. In them, she documents everything: her symptoms, her suspicions, her desperate attempts to protect her son. She also sent me copies of Charles's financial records that she managed to obtain." William's pulse quickened. "Financial records? What do they show?" "That Charles Ashford was deeply in debt," Margaret said grimly. "He had made disastrous investments in railroad speculation and mining ventures. He was facing financial ruin when he married Elizabeth. Her fortune saved him from bankruptcy, and her death made him wealthy beyond measure." She handed the bundle to William. "These letters, combined with the journal Catherine told me about in her note to me, should provide compelling evidence of Charles's motive and method." Catherine's eyes widened. "I sent you no note, Mrs. Winters." A chill ran through the room. Margaret's face went pale. "But I received a note yesterday, written in a feminine hand, saying that you possessed Elizabeth's journal and wished to meet with me to combine our evidence. It said to write to you at your lodgings and arrange this meeting." William was on his feet instantly. "We must leave, now. This was a trap to bring us all together, to discover what evidence exists against Ashford." Even as he spoke, there came a heavy knock at the door. A man's voice called out with false joviality, "Mrs. Winters, I am a friend of Mr. Charles Ashford, and he would very much like to speak with you about his late wife. Please, open the door." The three of them froze. William moved quickly to the window and looked down at the street. Two men stood below, watching the hotel's entrance. They had the look of hired enforcers, not legitimate investigators. "Is there another way out?" William asked Margaret quietly. "The servants' stairs at the end of the hall," she whispered. "But they will surely have men watching those as well." The knocking grew more insistent. "Mrs. Winters, we know Miss Pembroke is with you. Mr. Ashford simply wishes to speak with her about his son. No one needs to be harmed. Open the door, and we can discuss this reasonably." William made a rapid decision. He turned to Catherine and Margaret. "Give me Elizabeth's letters. I will create a diversion while you both escape through the servants' stairs. Make your way to the police station on Court Street. Ask for Lieutenant Barnes and tell him William Crawford sent you. He is a good man who cannot be bought by Ashford's money. Show him the letters and tell him everything." "I will not leave you," Catherine protested, her face stricken. "You must," William insisted, grasping her shoulders gently but firmly. "Those letters are the evidence we need. They must reach safety. Catherine, please, trust me one more time." For a moment, their eyes locked, and in that gaze passed all the words they had not yet spoken, all the feelings that had grown between them in these few intense days. Catherine reached up and touched his face tenderly. "Promise me you will be safe," she whispered. "Promise me you will find me again." "I promise," William said. "Now go, both of you, quickly." He pressed the bundle of letters into Catherine's hands and moved to the door. As soon as he heard the women's footsteps retreating down the hall, he called out loudly, "I am Detective William Crawford of the Boston Police. I am armed, and I am opening this door. Any violence against me will be considered assault on an officer of the law." He unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway, his hand on his revolver. Three large men stood before him, their expressions shifting from surprise to calculation. The leader, a scarred individual with cold eyes, spoke. "Detective Crawford, Mr. Ashford has been most anxious to make your acquaintance. He would like you to accompany us to his residence for a conversation." "I am conducting an official investigation," William replied evenly. "If Mr. Ashford wishes to speak with me, he may come to my office during business hours and make an appointment like any other citizen." The scarred man smiled without humor. "I'm afraid Mr. Ashford insists, and I'm afraid you do not have a choice in the matter." William's hand tightened on his revolver, but before he could draw it, he felt a sharp blow to the back of his head. The world spun, darkness creeping in at the edges of his vision. His last conscious thought was of Catherine's face, of her green eyes filled with trust and something deeper, something he had only just begun to hope he might deserve. William regained consciousness to the sensation of cold water splashing across his face. His head throbbed with nauseating intensity, and when he tried to move, he discovered his hands were bound behind him to a heavy wooden chair. He blinked against the dim light and found himself in what appeared to be a wine cellar, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and aged spirits. Standing before him, immaculate in a tailored suit despite the sordid surroundings, was Charles Ashford himself. The railroad magnate was a man of imposing physical presence, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver-streaked dark hair and features that might have been handsome had they not been twisted by arrogance and cruelty. His blue eyes, so like his son's in color but utterly unlike them in warmth, studied William with the detached interest of a man examining an insect beneath glass. "Detective Crawford," Ashford said, his voice cultured and cold, "I must commend you on your persistence. Lesser men would have accepted the official story of my son's disappearance and moved on to other cases. But you, it seems, have developed an unfortunate interest in my family's private affairs." William said nothing, his mind racing to assess his situation. They were clearly in the basement of Ashford's Beacon Hill mansion. The scarred man who had led the assault at the hotel stood near the door, along with two others. No one else appeared to be present. That meant Catherine and Margaret had likely escaped. The thought gave him strength. "Nothing to say," Ashford continued, beginning to pace slowly before William's chair. "How disappointing. I had hoped for witty banter, for the traditional exchange between adversaries. But perhaps you are simply stunned by your situation. Let me clarify it for you, Detective. You have involved yourself in matters that do not concern you. You have conspired with a hysterical music teacher to kidnap my son. You have attempted to damage my reputation with wild accusations. and now you find yourself in a rather precarious position. The truth has a way of emerging, Mr. Ashford, William said quietly, his voice steady despite the pain in his head. No matter how deeply you try to bury it. Ashford's expression flickered with irritation. Truth? What is truth but a matter of perspective? I loved my wife, Detective. Her death was a tragedy that devastated me, and my son's disappearance has been equally agonizing. If I seem desperate to find Timothy, it is because I am a father who loves his child. You were poisoning him, William stated flatly. Just as you poisoned Elizabeth. Arsenic, administered slowly over months. You murdered your wife for her fortune, and you were killing your own son to ensure that fortune remained yours. For a moment, genuine anger flashed across Ashford's face. Then he laughed, a sound devoid of genuine mirth. Such imagination, such baseless speculation. Tell me, Detective, do you have any actual proof of these outlandish claims? Any evidence that would stand up in a court of law? William met his gaze unflinchingly. Elizabeth's journal, her letters to her cousin, Timothy's hair sample, currently being analyzed by a toxicologist. The testimony of your household staff regarding your suspicious behavior. Yes, Mr. Ashford, I have proof. And by now, it is in the hands of people you cannot threaten or bribe. Ashford's composure cracked slightly. The Pembroke woman, she escaped with the letters, did she not? And you helped her. He moved closer, his face inches from William's. Where is my son, Detective? Where has that meddlesome teacher hidden him? Somewhere you will never find him, William replied. Somewhere safe from your poison. Ashford straightened, his expression hardening into something truly dangerous. Then we have reached an impasse. You see, Detective, I am a man of considerable resources and even more considerable determination. If I cannot locate my son through conventional means, I shall simply eliminate those who stand in my way and start fresh, beginning with you and then with Miss Pembroke. Harming me will only confirm your guilt, William said, though his heart had begun to pound with genuine fear not for himself but for Catherine. I am a police detective. My disappearance will be investigated thoroughly. Will it? Ashford asked mockingly. Or will it be concluded that you met with an unfortunate accident while pursuing a dangerous lead? Perhaps you fell into the harbor while investigating smugglers. Perhaps you were killed by criminals you were tracking. The police department is not infallible, Detective Crawford, and accidents happen to even the most careful men. As Ashford spoke, William's mind worked frantically. He tested his bonds subtly and found them tight, but not impossibly so. The chair to which he was bound was old, its joints potentially weak. If he could create enough of a distraction, if he could break free for even a moment, he might have a chance. But he needed time, needed to keep Ashford talking. You will not succeed, William said, infusing his voice with a confidence he did not entirely feel. Even if you silence me, Lieutenant Barnes at the police station is expecting Catherine and Margaret. They will show him the evidence. Dr. Morrison has Timothy's hair sample. The truth will emerge. Then I shall deal with each of them in turn, Ashford said with chilling casualness. Lieutenant Barnes can be persuaded to see reason, I assure you. The good doctor will find his laboratory suffering an unfortunate fire. And Miss Pembroke, well, she will simply disappear, much as my son did. But unlike Timothy, she will not be found alive. Rage flooded through William at the threat to Catherine. He lunged forward with all his strength, and the old chair groaned under the sudden force. One of the back legs cracked, throwing Ashford off balance. William threw himself sideways, crashing to the stone floor, but managing to break the weakened chair apart. His hands were still bound, but he was no longer immobilized. "Subdue him!" Ashford shouted, stumbling backward. The three hired men rushed forward, but William had already rolled to his feet, using the wall for support. He swung the broken chair leg still attached to his bound wrists like a club, catching the scarred man across the jaw and sending him sprawling. The second man grabbed William from behind, but the detective drove his elbow backward into the man's ribs, then stomped down hard on his instep. The man's grip loosened enough for William to break free. The third enforcer drew a knife, and William knew he had only seconds before the situation turned fatal. He kicked out, catching the man's wrist and sending the knife clattering across the floor. Then he ran for the cellar stairs, taking them three at a time despite his bound hands and swimming head. He burst through the cellar door into the main house, his mind focused on a single goal: escape and reach Catherine before Ashford's men could find her. He raced through the elegant corridors, servants crying out in alarm as he passed. Behind him, he could hear the thunder of pursuit. William crashed through the front entrance and into the street, where the afternoon sun momentarily blinded him. He staggered forward, knowing he needed to reach the police station, needed to warn Barnes, needed to find Catherine. A carriage was passing, and he threw himself in front of it, forcing the driver to pull up short. "Police emergency," William gasped. "Court Street Station, immediately. There is an extra $5 if you get me there within 10 minutes. The driver, seeing William's obvious distress and the ropes still binding his wrists, needed no further convincing. He whipped the horses into motion just as Ashford's men emerged from the mansion. The carriage raced through the streets of Boston, weaving between pedestrians and other vehicles with reckless speed. They arrived at the police station in 8 minutes. William tumbled from the carriage, pressed bills into the startled driver's hand, and burst through the station doors. The desk sergeant looked up in shock. "Detective Crawford, what in God's name?" "Where is Lieutenant Barnes?" William demanded. "Has a woman named Catherine Pembroke been here, or Margaret Winters?" "They are in Barnes's office now," the sergeant replied, rising quickly to cut William's bonds. "They arrived about 30 minutes ago with some wild story about Charles Ashford. Barnes was skeptical, but the letters they carried seemed genuine enough that he agreed to hear them out." Relief flooded through William so powerfully that his knees nearly buckled. "Take me to them, now, and send men to arrest Charles Ashford immediately. He is guilty of murder, attempted murder, and assaulting a police officer." The sergeant's eyes widened, but he moved quickly, leading William down the corridor to Barnes's office. The door was partially open, and through it, William could hear Catherine's voice, steady and clear despite the emotion underlying her words, explaining the entire conspiracy to the lieutenant. William pushed the door open, and Catherine's narration stopped mid-sentence. She turned, and the expression on her face, relief, joy, and something deeper that made William's heart soar, told him everything he needed to know. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and threw her arms around him, propriety forgotten in the intensity of the moment. "You are alive," she whispered against his chest. "Thank God you are alive. I was so afraid. I promised I would find you again," William said softly, holding her close despite the shocked expressions of Lieutenant Barnes and Margaret Winters. "I keep my promises." Barnes cleared his throat. "Detective Crawford, perhaps you should sit down and tell me exactly what happened. Miss Pembroke and Mrs. Winters have made some extraordinary claims, but if you can corroborate them." Over the next hour, William recounted everything. His investigation, the evidence he had gathered, his meeting with Timothy in Salem, Dr. Morrison's preliminary findings, and finally his abduction and Ashford's explicit confession. Barnes listened with increasing gravity, his initial skepticism giving way to grim determination. "This is the most damnable thing I have heard in 20 years of police work," Barnes said finally. "If what you say is true, Charles Ashford is a monster who deserves the full weight of the law brought down upon him." "It is true," William assured him. "Every word, and we have the evidence to prove it." Barnes stood decisively. "Then we shall arrest him immediately. I will personally lead the detail. Crawford, despite your condition, I want you with us. Your testimony will be crucial." "I will come," William said, then turned to Catherine. "But first, I must ensure that you and Mrs. Winters are protected. Ashford threatened you both specifically. I want officers stationed outside wherever you are staying until this matter is resolved." "We will be safe at my lodgings," Catherine said. "My landlady is formidable, and with police protection, Ashford's men would not dare approach." Barnes assigned 2 trusted officers to escort the women to Catherine's rooms and stand guard. As they prepared to leave, Catherine pulled William aside, her hand finding his. "Be careful," she said quietly. "Promise me you will return safely." "I will," William replied. Then, before he could second-guess the impulse, he raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "And when this is over, Catherine, when justice has been served and Timothy is truly safe, there are things I wish to say to you, things I should have said the moment I met you in that greenhouse." Catherine's eyes shimmered with tears, but she smiled. "Then I shall wait for you to say them, William Crawford, and I shall have things to say to you as well." The arrest of Charles Ashford proved anticlimactic compared to the drama that had preceded it. The railroad magnate had retreated to his study, and when police surrounded the house, he attempted to maintain his imperious demeanor. But when confronted with the combined testimony of William, Catherine, Margaret, and the household staff, when faced with Elizabeth's letters and journal, and especially when Dr. Morrison arrived with definitive proof that Timothy's hair contained lethal levels of arsenic, Ashford's facade crumbled. He was taken into custody without physical resistance, though he raged about his connections and influence all the way to the jail. His hired enforcers were arrested as well, charged with assault and kidnapping. The scandal that erupted in Boston society was tremendous, shocking the upper echelons of the city and dominating newspaper headlines for weeks. 3 days after Ashford's arrest, William traveled once more to Salem, this time accompanied by Catherine. They arrived at Helen Blackwood's house in the late afternoon, the autumn sun casting golden light across the peaceful street. Helen greeted them with tears of joy and relief. "Thank heavens it is over," she said, embracing her sister. "I have been so frightened for you both." Timothy came running down the stairs when he heard Catherine's voice, and she knelt to receive him, holding the boy close as he wept with happiness. "Miss Pembroke, you came back. They said you would, but I was afraid." "I will always come back to you, Timothy," Catherine said gently, stroking his hair. "You are safe now, truly safe. Your father can never hurt you again." Later, after Timothy had been told a carefully edited version of events and had fallen asleep exhausted from emotion, William and Catherine walked together in Helen's garden. The evening air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of the sea and the last roses of autumn. They walked in comfortable silence for a time, simply grateful to be alive and together. Finally, William stopped beside a wooden bench and turned to face Catherine. "I told you there were things I wanted to say," he began, taking her hands in his. "Things I have felt since that first night in the greenhouse, but have not had the courage or opportunity to express properly." Catherine looked up at him, her green eyes reflecting the fading light. "Then say them now, William. We have earned the right to speak freely. Catherine Pembroke, you are the most extraordinary woman I have ever known," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have shown courage that humbles me, intelligence that challenges me, and a capacity for love and sacrifice that has transformed me. These past days, investigating this terrible case, I was motivated not just by justice but by something far more personal. I was motivated by you, by the need to keep you safe, by the desire to be worthy of your trust and affection. I have fallen in love with you, Catherine, completely and irrevocably. And when this is all truly finished, when the trial is over and Timothy's future is secure, I want to court you properly. I want to build a life with you, if you will have me." Tears streamed down Catherine's face, but she was smiling radiantly. "William Crawford, I have loved you since the moment you chose to believe me, when any rational man would have dismissed my story as the hysteria of an overwrought woman. You saw me, truly saw me, and you valued what you saw. Yes, I will have you. Yes, I want that life with you. You are everything I never dared hope to find. A man of principle and passion, of strength and tenderness. I love you with all my heart." William drew her into his arms and kissed her, a kiss that held all the fear and hope and love of the past days, a kiss that promised a future neither of them had imagined possible when they first met. When they finally drew apart, both were breathless and laughing softly. "We must tell Timothy," Catherine said, wiping her eyes. "He will be so happy. He has been asking me about you constantly, wanting to know if the nice detective who visited him might come again." "We shall tell him tomorrow," William agreed. "Tonight, let us simply be grateful that we are all alive and safe and together." The trial of Charles Ashford took place in December of 1903 and became one of the most sensational cases in Boston's history. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of his crimes: Elizabeth's journal and letters, the testimony of household servants, Dr. Morrison's toxicology reports, financial records showing Ashford's desperate need for money, and William's own testimony about Ashford's confession and threats. The defense attempted to paint Catherine as an unhinged woman who had manipulated evidence and kidnapped Timothy out of some deranged obsession, but the jury saw through such tactics immediately. Charles Ashford was convicted of the murder of Elizabeth Ashford and the attempted murder of Timothy Ashford. He was sentenced to death by hanging, a sentence that was carried out the following spring. His vast fortune, which had been built on Elizabeth's inheritance, was placed in trust for Timothy until he reached majority, with Catherine named as the boy's legal guardian at the request of Elizabeth's family. In the months following the trial, William and Catherine's courtship proceeded with a propriety that satisfied even the most traditional observers, though everyone who saw them together recognized the depth of their affection. William would call at Catherine's lodgings in the evenings, bringing flowers and books, and they would walk together through the public garden discussing literature, music, justice, and their hopes for the future. Timothy often accompanied them, holding Catherine's hand and chattering happily about his piano lessons, which she had resumed teaching him. On a warm June evening in 1904, in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family, William Crawford and Catherine Pembroke were married in a church overlooking Boston Harbor. Timothy served as ring-bearer, his face shining with joy for the two people who had saved his life and given him a family once more. Helen Blackwood wept happy tears, and Dr. Morrison and Lieutenant Barnes stood witness with broad smiles. William and Catherine purchased a comfortable house on Commonwealth Avenue, close to William's office but with enough space for a proper music room where Catherine could teach and Timothy could practice. The boy flourished under their care, his health completely restored, his natural sweetness and musical talent able to bloom without the shadow of poison and fear. Though officially Catherine was his guardian, in every meaningful way William and Catherine became his parents, and he brought them as much joy as they brought him. William continued his work as a detective, building a reputation as a man who would pursue justice regardless of wealth or social position. Catherine resumed her teaching, but she also began to write, publishing articles about the importance of protecting children and advocating for legal reforms that would make it easier to prosecute domestic abuse and poisoning cases. Together, they became known as champions of the vulnerable, using their own terrible experience to help others. On quiet evenings, after Timothy had been tucked into bed and the house had settled into peaceful silence, William and Catherine would sit together in their parlor, sometimes reading, sometimes simply talking, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence with Catherine's head on William's shoulder. They would remember that night in the greenhouse, the beginning of their extraordinary journey together, and marvel at how something so terrible had led to something so beautiful. "Do you ever regret it?" William asked one such evening. "The danger you walked into, the risks you took?" Catherine smiled and took his hand. "How could I regret something that brought me to you, that saved Timothy, that brought justice for Elizabeth? No, my darling, I regret nothing. Every moment of fear was worth this, worth us, worth the life we have built together." William kissed her forehead tenderly. "The ransom note said to come alone. I did, and I found something I did not expect. I found you, Catherine. I found love when I was only looking for truth, and that has made all the difference. As have you, my love," Catherine whispered. "As have you." Outside, the gas lamps of Boston flickered to life one by one, illuminating the city they both loved and served. Inside, in the warm glow of their home, three people who had been brought together by tragedy and transformed by courage had found what they had all been searching for: safety, love, and a future filled with hope. The shadows of the past had given way to the light of the present, and ahead of them stretched all the bright promise of tomorrow.